Hi everyone, I'm Mick Sykes.
And it's Jip Jack on the attack.
And we're the hosts of The Anukai Tree here on Anchor FM.
If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Here's why.
It's totally free.
The creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer.
Anchor will distribute your podcast for you to all the streaming platforms, so you can be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so much more.
You can make coin from your podcast with no minimum listenership.
It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place.
Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
And don't forget to listen to us here on anchor.fm/Anukai.
ANVKAI. Hey, ANVKAI.
Come sit with us.
ANVKAI. ANVKAI. Hey.
With the new iPhone SE for less than $100 at Metro, you rule. It's the most affordable iPhone on the #1 brand in prepaid. So whether you're studying online or FaceTiming.
Hey, Mom.
Hi, dear. The iPhone SE has all you need. Switch to Metro and get the iPhone SE for $99.99 after rebate redemption and 6 months of service with AutoPay. Metro by T-Mobile. Rule your day. Limit 1 per account/household. Requires port and ID validation. Not valid for numbers currently on the T-Mobile network or active on Metro in past 90 days. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Blog Talk Radio.
Yo! I am your producer extraordinaire, Mr. Sykes, and I'm here with your host,
Jip Jack on the attack, brow.
And tonight's topic is, should black people, or people of color in general, really, continue to rock the vote, or should we find another way? Don't forget, you guys can call in with your questions or comments, or if you have anything to contribute to the conversation, and that number is 914-205-5458. Again, that number is 914-205-5458. And don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever podcasts are available. We're on everything. Make sure you like and subscribe and share this. These are great conversations that we're having here at the Anukai Tree, and we really want to make this conversation larger and have these conversations in our households. So make sure you share that with your friends and put those on your pages, and make sure you follow us on Instagram at Anukai Tree. And tonight we have a great panel. Might have a few surprise guests tonight. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we can get started with the show. So go ahead, Wali.
Yeah, hi, my name is Wali. I'm from the Bronx, New York. Most of the work that I do tends to revolve around electoral politics and public policy, as far as policy is concerned, more specifically higher education, voter reform, and green energy. And, yeah, I guess that's pretty much it for now.
Okay, Brandon and Blair, could you guys introduce yourselves?
Yep. Hi, everybody. My name is Blair Dottin-Haley.
And I'm Brandon, also known as the Bay Dottin-Haley.
And we are a entrepreneurial couple from, we live in the D.C. area. I've worked in state politics and state legislative politics in both Louisiana and in Texas. We both have degrees in political science, and we both are social justice advocates and activists.
Thank you, guys. And our final guest for this evening is Morgann Freeman.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here. I am an entrepreneur and now former candidate for Congress based out of Omaha, Nebraska, so right here in the Midwest. And I've been doing a lot of community organizing work for local social movements, and I've been partnering with a bunch of different nonprofits in the area. And as a candidate, have gotten a first-hand look at how our system treats Black candidates and treats Black people throughout the whole spectrum of the political process, from the moment that you enter to the moment that you leave. So I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you for coming. Thanks for calling in.
Okay, Jack, do you want to start? I know you have like some opening questions, so I'll let you handle that.
I do. So Morgann, knowing that you were a candidate and running and things of that nature, and then like stopped and everything like that, do you feel like the work that you do now would have been enhanced had you like been allowed to finish, if you will, and like actually won?
To be frank, I don't think that our system is set up, especially here in Nebraska, I don't think that our system is set up to allow divergent, intersectionally identified candidates to run authentically. And I realized that in order to do so, we need to build an infrastructure that's just not there right now. And I had two decisions in front of me. Either I continue to try to fight, and I may or may not be able to present and finish out in the way that I felt was true to myself and also doing my community justice, or I leave for now and work to build the infrastructure so that the next candidate doesn't have to go through what I went through. And obviously, I chose the latter.
Okay, understandable. That's like a really brave decision. I feel like running is a super brave decision in and of itself, especially as you said, like an intersectional person trying to run.
Yeah,
so
I'm
hearing,
actually the first. I'm the first Black woman to run for Congress in my state's history. I'm the first queer candidate to run for Congress in my state's history. I am the first openly disabled and neurodivergent person to run in my state's history. And I'm also the youngest to run in my state's history. And so I recognize just like running, right. And so just like in running, I already broke down some of those barriers so that even other women right now that are running were able to run and run authentically. But I realize there's so much other things that we need to do to get there.
I do have a question about that. Now, when you say running authentically, and we're going to open up the conversation, I don't want to leave the gentleman out in the cold. But when you say run authentically, do you mean having to sort of put on the white face and adjust for like the comfortability of white people in this country to make yourself more, I guess, what we call mainstreamly acceptable, or do you mean something else?
I mean, it's so much bigger than just that. In every aspect of how white supremacy has been normalized in our day-to-day reality. I mean, from how I speak when I'm in certain spaces to how I'm dressed to how my hair looks, but also in structuring my campaign in and of itself. Like, what title does my campaign person have? Can this campaign be structured horizontally, or does it have to be structured hierarchically? Even the way that the tax structure is and the reporting structure is, how does that have to be structured to be a candidate that's seen as a viable candidate? Do you have access to white money because that is the only money here? And if you don't have access to white money, how can you get access to white people that have access to that white money? Because that's how wealth is structured here. And it's so more deeply immersive than we even fully realize from a structural level and from a strategic level, that I realize it's not just about like, can I just walk into a space and speak as I normally would speak about Black lives or about criminal justice reform or about health disparities and about healthcare. It's not even just about that. It's about everything from the moment that you wake up as a candidate to the time that you go to sleep, and even while you're sleeping, with the conversations that are happening in rooms that you're not even allowed to be in.
That's a word. So with that said, I want to open this question up to the panel. So the remaining two candidates of color in the current presidential race for the Democratic Party have dropped out, like Andrew Yang and Patrick Duvall from Massachusetts, if I'm getting this right. I think I have his last name wrong. They announced that they were dropping out today. What do you feel like that means for the race of the rest of the Democratic campaigning as far as people of color's needs and wants are concerned? And wait, we have one more. We have somebody calling in. Hello, is this Gazi?
Black Power, God blue.
Black
Power, Gazi.
So, and the man who needs no introduction, Gazi Kodzo, has joined us. And I know he's going to be here briefly because he's a very busy man. But I just asked the panel that as of today, the remaining two candidates of color for the Democratic candidate have dropped out today. So I was asking, what do you all feel that means for the needs of people of color being addressed by the remaining Democrats that are running as the race continues? What do you feel like that means? Or could mean?
Mm-hmm. You asking me?
Anybody feel free to chip in. Anybody feel free to chime in.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll answer because I got to go soon, but I have an hour. I think that's an amazing question, and it's a very important one. I think for us to see the answer to the question, we have to see exactly like what is like laid out in front of us. So African political candidates in a system birthed from colonialism and slavery and functions through colonialism and slavery still to this day, participants in that structure are only there to continue the status quo, to continue that oppressive process, that oppressive relationship between the oppressor and the oppressed. And when I say oppressor, I mean white people. And by oppressed, I mean African and other colonized people. Everybody ain't white. That's how this world works. So anyone that's in there is to operate that system and to continue that system no matter what it is. It is not to so even if an African politician is in that framework, they are in that framework and will be judged by that framework and will be, will be able to stay in that framework by following those rules. Meaning if you had the best revolutionary heart, you could not survive there and have some long type of career. It would take you, it would chew you and spit you out, and if it couldn't do that, it will take you out, right? So you can't be no Malcolm X president. It's just not going to be it. So when they do have African candidates, it's just to sell out the interest of black people and have us believe that the system is working with us or working for us to see ourselves, right? So it's just white power in blackface. That's what you have all down the road whenever you see an African candidate. So I think what it says to us right now is that the white system, the two main sectors of the white ruling class, the Republican Party and the Democrats, both have decided that they don't need to play with us no more, that they don't find us that valuable anymore, that they would need an Obama 2.0. And that's why you're seeing a very much more white Democratic Party and candidates at the front, because that's what they're betting on. They're trying to win Trump voters. They're not trying to win African people, black people. They feel like we're gonna vote Democrat anyway. And sadly, but honestly, it's true. They don't need a black candidate, and they don't need black black-sounding policies to win African people anymore because they've got black people in America afraid of the boogeyman Trump. So you scared of master number 2, you're going to run to the clutches of master number 1, and they both going to beat your ass at the end of the day. So Black Power, have a revolution.
Black Power, Gazi, thank you. You out?
Black Power. Oh, no, I'm still here. I'm here until 7.
Okay, cool.
Well, 8. Yes.
Okay.
Anybody
Any
else?
other responses to the question, or does anyone respond said, or?
Hey, Blair, I'll jump in. So, a couple things before I answer the question. Congratulations to Morgann Freeman. Thank you for your pioneering example and trailblazing in what I know is difficult water that you were treading in the middle of the country. I completely agree with what was just said. What was just said about participation in American politics, right? Because it was not designed for black people to be citizens, and it still functions in that way, regardless of the face that you put on the politician. The system is designed to regenerate itself in very colonial ways, and so even, as much as people laud the symbolism of the Obamas and what they, supposedly symbolize for the progress of black people in America, they were still guardians of the empire, and so even their behavior and their participation in the system is not necessarily what those who are looking for or seeking revolution or seeking what the kind of freedom that that Harriet Tubman wanted or that Marcus Garvey wanted. We won't see that kind of freedom by participating directly in American politics. Now, what I will say is, I do think that there are multiple ways to engage politically, and I do think that voting and participating, I also do think we need people to participate in the system in some ways, and so that's what I think.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot. This is the Bay. So I think that there's definitely a lot to be said for the 200-plus-year-old system of governance that we have, and the way that we all come together as a country to elect our officials and to kind of put forth policy. I think one of the things that we could do, to Blair's point, is certainly corral the resources that we have collectively. I think that there are ways that we could look at our local level politics and communities and say, hey, what can I do to be engaged? If we are struggling to find, just the basic resources for one particular community, let's figure out how we can get together and address that. Just looking at your neighborhood, your community, I think is a great place to start. And then we can also look at expanding into, state politics and even at the national level. I think trying to elect a president to be our savior is misguided, and it's just not going to lead to anything. I think that we really have to attack this beast from the root, and it's gonna take looking at local politics. We have to look at how we can corral resources from our own community. Blaze and Worship is a great example in New Orleans. They get together and and collectively organize people's businesses and celebrate each other's artistry as a community. And I think that there are ways that we can do that. What was the name of that group again? It's called Blaze and Worship. On the last Sunday of every month in New Orleans. If you're ever down there, just ask around for Blaze and Worship. I mean, it's a great example of what community can do when you have space that can be provided for artists, for entrepreneurs, for, community builders to get together and, corral each other's network and resources.
Question about Blaze and Worship. Does the government have their hand in that, whatsoever? Is that something that's happening politically, their representatives or, district reps or things of that nature, funding or supplying the space, or is that all civilian run? All civilian. Okay. So I guess my next question. Oh, sorry, was somebody saying something?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So I guess my next question is, when it comes to the hierarchy from President Ole down to local politics in terms of people's district reps, the Senate and Congress and things of that nature, do we really at this point believe that those people aren't also put in place in the same ways that the president is put in place? Or are we still under the idea that those people have some level of choice that the president doesn't?
So this is Morgan, by the way. One of the things that I realized in doing some of the community organizing work, especially in a space like Nebraska, where we don't necessarily have a large population of Black people that have the support and the infrastructure in place where we can collaborate collectively in ways that places like New Orleans or even St. Louis or other spaces do, because we have such high poverty here. We do have such high segregation here. We have pockets of Black wealth, but that Black wealth is almost always tied to white wealth. And when we're working on a lot of these social movements, we always come up against political leaders that are the decision makers in executing X, Y, and Z thing, be it criminal justice reform, be it policing in our neighborhoods, be it something as simple as helping the homeless that are in our neighborhoods. All of these things are directly influenced by the political leaders that are governing our spaces. And in doing a lot of the work to mobilize for freedom and liberation of Black people, especially the Black people that I grew up with, right here in my neighborhoods, and my family and my cousins and whatnot, when we're looking at what that revolution could look like, there was not a way that did not require everything and everyone mobilizing in every space. And it requires my family that's over here organizing protests and rallies, or it requires my family over here that's heavily involved in the church. It literally involves everyone, but it also involves someone that is dissenting within the system at the end of the day. Because when we aren't actively engaged, when we're not voting, when we're not at least trying to get someone other than a Donald Trump or a Don Bacon, who's the congressional representative here, they're continuously making things even worse for our community. And it all has to happen in tandem in order for these things to at least marginally progress. And it's kind of ironic because I was literally just in a space where we were talking about The Ballad or the Bullet by Malcolm X. He's actually from the Omaha area. And we're talking specifically about how we're at that crucial point of do I think that the American political system is ever going to ever going to be saved? I sincerely doubt it. It is not for us. It was never for us. It's never going to be for us. However, while we are still here, I think that we can make it better. And if I can do something within my very short lifetime to make it better, I'm going to try to do it. And if I need to put my life and my soul on the line so that I can make things better for my family and my friends and the people that matter most to me, I'm going to do it. But I also realize that in order to make things better for everyone, we need more of us that are opting into doing that work so that we can disrupt as much as possible what those systems are. Because what I have seen is that people like Ernie Chambers, for example, who just passed this really fantastic police reform bill right here in Nebraska, he's one of the most incredible leaders that I've ever seen on a local level, and he is a state senator. Like, they literally impose term limits at our state legislature only because of Ernie Chambers, because he's been in office for longer than I've been alive. And I realize that my community is better off because of the work that he's done, but I also realize he is, in some ways, not in some ways, he has sold out in some ways. He has made decisions that I don't agree with in some ways. And on every level of government, we have to. Like, we have to politically engage. Like, there is no revolution without that. Because otherwise, we're talking about a full-out, guns-blazing rebellion. And so if we're talking about revolution, revolution for me is...
I was about to say too. So just like, thank you, Gazi.
like, let's be real. Like, if it comes out to a full-out rebellion, then let me go get my permits. But I think that we still have an option for revolution, and that's what I'm trying to build an infrastructure for, and we need more people that are going to do that.
You don't need a permit if we're going to go for the revolution. Just get the guns.
Agreed. Because I guess my next question, after, you know what I'm saying, that, like, I guess, like, you kind of answered it, Morgan, because I was going to say, okay, like, I do believe that at least at the local level, some people come in to these political spaces such as Congress, et cetera, district reps and the like, with the intention of doing really good things, you know what I'm saying? Like, they come in, but then, like, eventually they either see, like you said, they can't run authentically, or once they get in there, they wind up having to sell out in some ways. And 9 times out of 10, any of those ways are detrimental to our community at large, like, regardless. I find it difficult to see what is happening as progress. To me, it just looks like appeasement until something, some other shoe drops, you know? And I guess we can be happy with some level of appeasement because, like, okay, you know, I don't know. I was going to say something crazy, like they not lynching niggas every day, but they still are. It's just not on a postcard now. You know what I'm saying? Other than that,
right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like I don't necessarily see, like, this progress that everyone's talking about.
Well, one thing I'll say is every election that black people have ever participated in has been a choice of the lesser of two evils, right? Because the circumstances weren't designed for us to have freedom, equality, all of those things that the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence says, right? And so because we're always choosing the lesser of two evils, I think the point that, to the point that I think that that you're getting at around appeasement is that things could always be better, but they could also always be worse, right? And so while we are still dealing with, in a lot of places, you know, unarmed black people killed by the police, things like lynching, we aren't living in a slave state as we did I mean, there were times in which we wouldn't be able to have this conversation at all.
If you wind up going to prison, you in a slave state.
Then you're a slave.
No, agreed. No, I completely agree. I agree.
So,
I agree that the prison industrial complex and the new slavery is the continuation of the slave state. What I'm saying is that there are levels, right, to this, right? And there are levels and degrees to which suffering and oppression happens, right? And there is a difference. I mean, and if we could just talk about the last presidential election, right? there are a lot of folks who said that there was no distinction between the two candidates, right? Of course, the Clintons have been a part of the American colonial machine empire for decades, right? But there is a difference. I think we would see some difference between the governance that Hillary Clinton would have potentially given versus what we're experiencing now. And so I've been advocating to people that here's the thing about voting, right? And I come from a family of people who helped integrate the lunch counters in New Orleans, who helped found the Congress of Racial Equality and were fighting for
you
civil
come
rights.
from a very famous civil rights family.
And so one of the things that I believe that voting is something that people should do, but I also do not think that we should shame people who have decided that they're not going to engage in that way and have decided to engage politically other ways. Because in a system that is not designed for your benefit, while you're trying to feed your family and survive and live and exist, there's who am I to try to impress upon you or try to levy the burden of the weight of what the ancestors struggled on you to go and vote. People have to figure out what contribution they can make to their own personal family, community, and their own survival. I mean, folks out here trying to survive.
Well, and I also think that it's really important that when we're talking about like choosing between the lesser of two evils, or honestly not choosing either of those horrible options, like the last election and frankly every election, we should just get better candidates. What if we actually what if we ourselves focus on infiltrating as much as possible the political system so that we had more people that would actually do the right thing because they're not there for the wrong reasons?
Now, that's a question. That's a question. What do you guys feel about that?
But that's
not how it works, though.
You run into the same challenge, right? You run into the same wall. The system is designed to keep those people at bay. And so there's only so far that you're going to be able to go, elected or not. I have friends who I've both worked for people who've been in elected office for decades, and have friends who are newly elected to state legislatures. And the conversation that I've had with all of them, especially the newly elected folks, is don't allow your intentions to determine what it is or how it is that you think you're going to be able to be helpful, because your intentions are going to run into a system that is designed to subvert what most of your good intentions, the outcomes of most of your good intentions. And you alone are not going to be able to turn that system upside down in order to get the outcomes that your good intentions are trying to reach. Mm-hmm. It just is that. I mean, that's just a fact. Because like Morgan was saying, you run into money, you run into the money issue, and the money issue, and those with money and power in the political life, they have agendas. And those agendas are tied to them being able to maintain that power and maintain that money.
Absolutely. Gazi, before you go, Black Power.
Can you hear me? Oh, yeah. I was just saying I really want to unite with that and also say that you won't just run into money issues. You'll run into the guns. Like, this is not some innocent political democracy machine that we're working with or that we're looking at. We are looking at a band of murderers. These are people that send drones to murder children and watch these children bleed out and die. This is the system that you think that you can organize us to go in there and somehow change. They will kill you like that child. Do you hear me? They have these drone operators, these soldiers that go into rooms that look like arcades and stick drones on people, innocent people, just to steal their oil and resources. You understand? And then these drones have to watch after the body until the American soldiers can come pick up the body. And if any person comes to the body before the American soldiers, they get shot too. That's how children in Afghanistan end up dead, running towards their father's body. That is this machine. Don't let the suit and tie fool you. Don't let that cardigan-wearing Ho Warren fool you. Don't let these bright lights and shit and Anderson Cooper fool you. These are rabid, murdering beasts, and that's what they do on a daily basis. They wake up and go to sleep, killing African and colonized children and adults every day for $1 in their pocket. It's what feeds them. This is a parasitic system. The only thing we need to do is focus all that political know-how and all that education you got and everything you think you know and organize and build a system for your people, by your people. We have to create dual contending power. Dual contending power. If you think you can be such a great political leader for the white system, be a great political leader for the black system, for black power, for your community, and not just for you. I don't give a damn about you because I don't give a damn about myself. Do it for the entire nation of people because that's what's really going to solve our issue. You saw China got that coronavirus, whatever they got, but what you got to really pay attention to is how China built a damn hospital with 3,000 rooms in 7 days. No African country can do that. No Africans in America can do that. All of us coming together with Oprah and goddamn Michael Jordan. We can't do that. And we face AIDS, and we face Ebola, and we face malaria and all kinds of crazy viruses that take millions of us out, and we can't build no hospital like that. Because
also
we need
by the white man.
Power. We need a real revolution. And China couldn't always build hospitals like that. It takes time. It takes sacrifice. It takes self-determination. We have to think self-determination and self-governance. And if you waste any 2 seconds of your power in that system, that is on you, your own ignorance, and not looking at 300 to 600 years of dialectical materialism, looking at history. You ain't that smart. We ain't that smart. Our ancestors have tried it. Do the thing that worked.
Failed miserably.
That freed Vietnam. Do the thing that freed China. Do the thing that freed Cuba. Do those things if you want self-determination, if you want real freedom. Other than that, you playing with your life. You playing with your life and you're playing with your people's time. Take off the kufi and the dashiki and just be a whipping boy for them. Just happily be it. But don't be it while dragging and saying, I'm doing this for our legacy. No, you're not. You're doing it for yourself. You're doing it for a Birkin bag. You're doing it for some nice Prada shoes. You're doing it for a nice car you can swoop up and pick up your chicken and feel like a special Negro. Just keep my people out your mouth. Because people that do stuff for my people end up in jail. But anyways, I love y'all all so much, and I've got to go into a meeting because we're building dual contending power at the Black Hammer Organization, where we feed, clothe, and house our homeless people. Also, we do free HIV and AIDS testing and awareness in multiple different communities. We're building a chapter in Nigeria, so make sure to go to blackhammer.org to sign up and join dual contending power, y'all. And they'll pull out the gun sooner or later at us, and we're going to have to defend ourselves. Black power.
I say, Black power.
Thank you, Gazi.
Oh.
Well, now that the ground is blazing,
right,
let's get into the main question of the night. And I really want all of you to be able to respond to this. Should black people continue to rock the vote or find another way? Wali, like, what do you think about this? Like, you've been, like, I know there's been a lot going on. Like, how do you feel about this?
I honestly think, we should be a little bit of both. We still have so much to, accomplish on a legislative level, and thanks to whoever who spoke earlier in regards to the importance of down ballot races. The interesting thing about federal politics is, despite how little legislation that goes through Congress, ends up getting signed and goes into law, that number is very nominal if we compare that to the sheer amount of legislation that passes through, local and state legislatures. I remember this time I was watching last week tonight with John Oliver, and he was comparing the number of legislation that Congress passed and state legislatures passed during like 2013, 2014-ish. During that period, about only 185 bills were passed and enacted, but during that same time period, more than 10,000 bills were passed and enacted across state legislatures. We can pay as much attention as we want to the presidential election. He or she, no matter how quote-unquote progressive they are, they can push as many initiatives as they want, but it still has to go through a partisan Congress. And, all these progressive ideas that are being brought forth in Congress, I'm saying quote-unquote progressive because the word progressive tends to get thrown around so much that, frankly, I don't really give a damn about it anymore. A lot of those ideas, you can see how they work well if you advocate for them in, through state and local politics, and that itself can, strengthen the argument for having those things on a federal level. So, we should be paying a lot more attention to state and local politics. We have a lot more to lose, especially on a local level, because Trump can keep saying whatever he wants to do, but Congress is split. We have a Republican Senate, a Democratic House. Our eyes really should be set towards those down ballot races. And as far as participation in the political system is concerned, I do believe we need to start off with, acknowledging that the current economic system itself is flawed, the way that it has operated for centuries since the Industrial Revolution, exploiting labor at whatever cost, just for the sake of profit, really. But at the same time, given how entrenched the current, political and economic system is, I feel like, part of it is that, we really have no choice but to participate, regardless of what your opinions might be on voting. And I've noticed this, a lot of voters of color tend to be more moderate than white voters, which is that, despite, for example, the track records of, white candidates such as Amy Klobuchar, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, or anyone who hasn't really walked the walk in previous decades as far as policies that affect communities of color disproportionately, such as the war on drugs, mass incarceration. A lot of the time, because so much tends to be at stake for people of color, like I'm South Asian, my family is Muslim, my parents are undocumented. As much as I disagree with certain cases that I don't, feel like are really going to push the conversation in a direction that, that I want, I feel like at this moment of time politically, the risks are really too high to really abstain from the political process, especially as voting is concerned. You can, see voters of color, voting for, quote unquote, like, the lesser of two evils, like, someone mentioned earlier. Part of me, feels like that, this is because we've become so accustomed to, having to settle for political crumbs and, incrementalism, that we entrench that into our mindset, and we feel like that's really the only way that we can get things politically because we're so scared of what the other option would be. So, yeah, we do need better candidates, but at some point, in certain circumstances, we do need to be prepared to be able to bite, the bullets so that we don't end up losing, so much, especially as far as the 2016 election is concerned. Initially, I had my own concerns about, part of me was kind of hell-bent on not voting for Joe Biden, come the general election if he ever becomes the Democratic nominee because of how terrible his track record has been, on, civil rights and, mass incarceration from defending schools segregated, busing in the 70s to, or rubbing shoulders and talking about how well he got along with, similar-minded Republican senators, kind of that, quote unquote, we have to, talk to both sides kind of BS. After the impeachment proceedings and so much that's already happened within these past 2 months, a part of me is really wondering, to what degree can I really afford to, take an uncompromising, position in this presidential election. I mean, a lot of the candidates, they have a lot of skeletons in their closet, and, it sucks, but at the same time, I don't know how much more I am willing to lose after these next 4 years. I mean, God forbid they start putting, barcodes on undocumented immigrants or Muslims. It's just like it's such a capricious political period right now.
They're damn there.
Again, I feel like the stakes are too high politically for us to really abstain from the political process, but we do need to focus on that movement building, not revolution. But those should go hand in hand. We need to keep building from the ground up, but at the same time, we need to, approach our politics in a practical sense.
Understandable. I would just say, like, we're practically there in terms of like how they already stopped domestic flights, and you got to have a special ID. You know what I'm saying, from New York and this and that. So it's like they start little things, and yeah, it is in New York, but like we're the ones that start everything for everyone for the most part. And at the end of the day, like once it starts here, it's definitely going to spread. So it's, I mean, like these things are happening. And I'm at the point where I don't see Trump or any president in and of themselves as the lesser of two evils. To me, it's like death by, guillotine or death by 1,000 paper cuts. Like, to me, it's just like still death. And then at this point, it's just about how it looks that it seems like whoever is actually running the show wants to make a point about how it looks versus what's actually happening, because what's actually happening tends to always be to our detriment, But I still want to ask the question.
I guess a better analogy would be: would you rather have the Molotov cocktail or the flaming bag of poop?
I mean, and my answer is neither, always, every time. And it's like so. I mean, I feel like. Does anyone here feel like integration was really a good idea? Like,
God,
honestly?
no, it was not. Like,
right.
Sorry, this is Morgan again. So
yeah.
Here's the thing. As much as we would like to literally create an entirely a community that is entirely our own, the fact is that we're all here. Period. And the government has its hands in us in every step of the way, from our taxes to tracking our information to even being able to track this conversation right here. They have,
exactly.
they already are there. They're already ruling our lives. And even if we choose to have our own community where we're just focusing on our own, they're still going to be there. And they're still going to keep doing these shady things that are affecting our community, even if we're only focusing on us. They're going to force us to have to choose between us and them, period. And that's going to be a constant fight because they've been doing that. They've been doing that for centuries. And they're going to keep doing that because they're trifling like that. And that's just the way white supremacy works. It wants to continuously subjugate anyone that is not a white, cisgender, heterosexual male, period. Like, that's, it.
This is a preach. This is a preach.
Because, like literally, that's the way that the structure works. And even people that participate in the system to try to change the system, like, you have to know what you're getting into. Because, like, one individual person can change the system, but only so far, period. And there's this, I think within social justice spaces, there's an expectation of a superhuman candidate or a superhuman politician, like where they are a more pure or entirely pure version of what we want to see reflected in our political system, and we don't give them grace in that. And I think that for some, to be frank, I believe we've given, previous generations, especially, I think of my parents' generation and my grandparents' generation, we were too okay with things that we should have not let slip.
Agreed.
And I see political actors, especially right now, I look at our local politics here in Omaha, I look at our city council, we have 2 Black people that have been involved with local city government and have continuously been a part of decisions that have divested from our community and are continuously making decisions against them, and they get elected time after time after time because we choose the lesser of 2 evils. The people in my community see the bad option as better than no option. And we haven't even had the opportunity to choose a better option yet. And
but again, I feel
continuously, I understand, and to some degree, I was at one point in my life, I was at where I don't know her name, but the other speaker, I was there. I wanted 100% to check out of the American system as it currently operates. But for one, that is a privilege that other people in my community do not have. 2, they're still going to try to affect my reality in ways that I do not have control over. And if they're going to continuously come for me, I'm going to finally just come for them.
Wholeheartedly agreed.
If I'm given 2 options of allowing them to fuck with me and trying to focus on my community right here, or going straight to them with a fight to try to change just a tiny section of my community for the better, I'm going to choose that, period. And I know what the system is. I have seen it. I have struggled through it. And I know that there are other generations that have. I know that there are people that are going to continue to. But I've also seen progress. And I have seen people survive where they would not otherwise. And I'm sorry, can nobody tell me that work wasn't for good and that decision wasn't a good decision? I want to build a reality one day where my people do not have to interact with white supremacy in any way, shape, or form because they can completely divest from oppression in any form. But I also realize that those oppressions are intersecting, and so if I'm going to address one area of white supremacy, I have to address the whole. And I don't see anybody else doing that work. And until I see somebody else doing that work in any way, it's just like Wali was talking about, eventually we're stuck between, being a couple of months away of having a barcode implanted on, people of color just because they look brown or look like they could be from a different community. Like, Lord help me if somebody hears me talking Spanish because I'm fluent in both languages, because they assume when they look at me that I'm one identity, that for more intersections that I add to that identity, the further and further I get from humanity in their eyes, and the more their next action of oppression becomes more violent. And just being able to get to a place where that is, where the, like here in Nebraska especially, there is this veneer of politeness and veneer of civility that I'm trying to scrape off, just because it has led to out and out racism in ways that I don't think other areas of the United States see.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've traveled all over, and I've had conversations with people from all over, and I don't think people realize just how bad it is in places like Nebraska. And I don't see people coming, like when I hear conversations about Black folks and Black liberation, nobody mentions Omaha, Nebraska. Nobody mentions the Midwest. Nobody mentions people from small towns where we're 11% of the state population.
There's niggas out there at all, Morgan. I'm sorry.
Right.
When I tell you, we don't even know
that
y'all
focus
out
on
there.
Midwest, they focus on the white pig farmers there. Not really.
Right.
We don't even
know that y'all are out there.
Iowa,
like,
New Hampshire, I guess that could be a different topic in itself. I mean, do Iowa and New Hampshire still need to go first in the primaries?
Right. So, like,
so I'm just glad that we know that somebody who can say that y'all are
everywhere.
Out there. Mm-hmm. Right.
Well,
I don't know. Like when I first met you, and you told me where you're from, I did a double take. I was like, wait, where?
Yeah. No. Like, did you know that 2 years ago there was a young Black man that was unarmed and shot 11 times at point blank range. He is still in rehab, and I did everything I could to try to bring people's attention to it, but nobody cared because it was Omaha, Nebraska.
This was over there in Omaha?
This is in Omaha. And stuff like this happens all the time because we are screaming into a void and trying to get our fellow organizers all across the United States to join us in that same liberation work, and nobody sees this as a priority other than ourselves.
I would absolutely
as awesome
beg
as
you.
That's great.
I would absolutely beg you to follow Gazi Hammer, to go to Black Hammer, and really check out what's going on and see if you feel like any of that can work over there, and to start a chapter. Because like when you say that, like, you know, you don't see people doing the work, I mean, like, yeah, like, okay, admittedly, like straight up admittedly, as a person from New York, like I did not, you know what I'm saying, like you said, you were screaming into a void that I did not have access to, you know what I'm saying? And I appreciate the fact that we got you to come on here and say these things so that people can actually know what's going on. You know, because again, I mean, like, you know, we not, you know, the highest rated podcast in the world, but we got quite a few listeners, and they are from places that are not Omaha, Nebraska, and I believe that they will help spread the word, because it's not that we don't care, it's that really there's no visibility in, you know, like we just really don't know. You know, I feel like the more people that are of our ilk and that we care enough to actually have this conversation with both like and somewhat unlike minds, the more of us that know, the more we'll be able to say something. And I think it's definitely important to me to get people that are literally in the middle of the country to feel supported and to be supported, so that we can support each other from all ends. Because like you just said, even though, again, I didn't realize that there were Black people in Nebraska, still we are everywhere. And if we can just reach out and make this blanket happen, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
I think that I don't want to minimize some of the work that's already happening, because I'm making some generalizations. I know that there are people doing this work and that are working with other areas of the United States, because I know that there's some really fantastic programs that are happening here in my community that are entirely owned and operated by Black folks for Black folks and for our Black liberation explicitly. However, when I'm looking at other places like Atlanta, or I'm looking at New Orleans, or I'm looking at DC, or I'm looking at New York, and those infrastructures where, for example, whenever I travel, if I choose to, I could go to only Black-owned businesses the entirety of the time that I am there. That is not something you can do in Omaha, Nebraska. Period. And that has a lot to do with specifically public policy and specific decisions that politicians have made to disenchant and to marginalize and to oppress Black folks here in this community. And having someone in office that is not worried about their own bottom line, that is not worried about their own personal ambition, and could give two fucks about what the party says, having somebody like that in office could change everything for my community.
Okay.
On the local level,
I'm convinced that it's important, you know, because, I mean, again, like, I didn't come in here thinking that's important. I'm like, if we can disengage as much as possible, then let's get the fuck out. So if it's important to do that, right, how do we actually make that happen? Like we said earlier, we know that, you know, at the very least, there are economic blockades to such a candidate coming into their position. But like Gazi said, I mean, I don't know if anybody here is actually unaware, but we're not fighting against anyone that is fighting fair or has ever fought fair. Like, it's very absolutely true that these are murdering thugs that will stop at nothing to keep the status quo going so that they can essentially, you know, people want to make it about money, and sure it is, but they really just want access to all the resources because the powers that be have this idea of scarcity as though there's not abundance on the planet. So they drain and drain and drain, and they just want to drain until they can potentially move on to another planet to drain. So that being said, and we know they trying to figure out all kinds of ways into space. Even somebody with what we consider as the low IQ of a Donald Trump is talking about a space force. Everybody in that power sector is trying to get to space. Because to them, the planet is dying, but it's just becoming uninhabitable to humans, right? So anyway, all of that said, how do we make that happen? And if there's no way to make that happen, what do we do from there?
Like, how do you fight something that has no honor? Is like the question that I'm asking, and also something that I feel like as Black people in this country we need to constantly be thinking about. Because historically they proved that to us, like, there's no low that white supremacy won't go to like subvert us and cut us at the knees. So how do you fight something that has that strong of an intent?
Well, yeah, I mean, Assata Shakur. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Blair, go ahead.
Well, Assata said nobody in the world has ever gotten their freedom by appealing to the moral sense of the people who are oppressing them. And generation after generation of Black freedom fighters have said some version of that, because white supremacy has no conscience and will never have any conscience. I personally think that working in a silo is not how we're going to get this done. Like, Black liberation doesn't just happen by focusing only on our Blackness. It is about all of our intersections coming together and mobilizing together collectively for our collective liberation. And so, because I can't diverse my womanness or my queerness or my neurodivergence or any of that from who I am as a Black person. And I think the focus of previous movements, specifically on Black masculinity, is part of the reason why we faltered.
Hallelujah. Absolutely. I think that's a very good point. I just want to make a note. Here at the Anukai Tree, Blackness includes every single bit of what she just listed, including neurodivergence for any Black people that were raised in a "you need therapy" or "you what's wrong with your brain" community. neurodivergent
or a religious
most
community.
African tribe or a religious community, I say, most neurodivergent, most tribes from where we come from, or even spread out, right, treated neurodivergence for the most part as a blessing because it meant that you had to be taken care of by the community but at all times, that they felt blessed to take care of you. Some also put them in a place depending on what's going on, you know what I'm saying, depending on that particular divergence. We'll put them in shaman places and things of that nature because they considered it more of an opportunity to connect with higher realms than it is a burden or something that is to be fixed. So from that on up the list that she just said, that's blackness. It's Western, white, colonial thought for you to feel any way against any bit of your people besides somebody committing a crime, and no tea, no shade, when you live in a society that is 99% accepting, you are less inclined to crime.
Because every black experience is a black experience unless that experience is anti-black.
Okay. Somebody else was about to talk. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just had to. She mentioned that, and I was like, that's true that our community does that, and that should be.
But go ahead, answer.
I still need a plan. You know what I'm saying? I feel like though that is something that we need to do in our community in general. I think even that will help us in building our own infrastructure, because it would be if we knew that in the first place. I'm sorry, just because nobody came up and said anything, but if we knew that in the first place, we wouldn't be asking white people for anything. I feel like marching for the right to vote in their situation instead of creating our own situation. Okay, you won't give us the right to vote, we're going to create our own. Of course, they did everything to stop that, i.e. Black Wall Street and things of that nature. They did everything in their power to stop that too. But if we at least knew that there was no need to be respectable to white people in any way and agree with anything that they've ever told us ever in life, then we would have kept on as that situation, you know what I'm saying, and been in a place where, in that place that we were talking about right now, where we don't have to appeal to whiteness or come to whiteness or engage in whiteness in any way, I'm not saying we missed our chance, but Lord have mercy, if we, instead of trying to fight for the white man's drinking fountain and the white man's woman, we would have fucking...
They got nuked, man.
We would have been so much farther along. But if anybody has an actual plan of action that could get these, or you know what I'm saying, or just even
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we got to do is look at creating a strategy that's not at all going to take a day or a month or even a year to execute, right? We're talking about hundreds of years of colonialism and white supremacy. It's going to take at least half of that to organize and put enough people in the right places to even get this thing moving in a direction that we envision as idyllic. So I think that if the first thing that we got to do is just recognize that it's just us. We start this conversation, we continue the conversation, as painstaking as it is, as frustrating as it is with each other, with the people around us, and we keep doing the work in our little lives to keep moving this needle forward. If you want a plan, I say burn it all down.
We need a secret society, man. You really do. And not the Masons. They're too joined to whiteness at this point for it to be anything. But we need cloak and dagger shit, honestly. And I know that sounds a little crazy, but honestly, hearing other black people feel the way that we do is comforting. To say the very least.
Join Anukai at jipjack.com.
Oh yeah, and if anyone wants to call in, the number is 914-205-5458 if you want to join the conversation. But yeah, like I feel like we definitely need like a Black People's Society that's engaged and working and doing all that, and like create the perfect candidate. Like so, like smooth that the white folks won't even notice them. Then bam, they're elected.
I'm just say, like I agree with the absolute idea that it's going to take hundreds of years to develop this situation.
That's how we need to see the society.
But like same time, that to me means that the idea was had, and people keep trying to do it. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know, like, we're gonna have, like, it would have to be, like you said, babe, on some real deep secret society shit, because end of the day, we would have to control this person's life from like the shadows, and literally like
get the keys, man.
Literally like create this person generations down the line and rule how somebody's family raises their family, and like really like walk, you know what I'm saying, and not necessarily rule, but like be engaged in an actual conversation to be like with that person's family, like, look, we think things need to be this way, this and that, because blah, 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 and really unpack even with the child as we go down the line to create somebody that does the thing, you know, because like my family, you know, is, you know, from behind the scenes policy as well, you know, and it's just like it's being done. So like it's gonna take more organizing as usual, and that's annoying.
And we can do it. Like Gazi said, we did another episode with Gazi, and he said like Black people feel like this organizing is hard work, but we literally created civilization. Like we just haven't been allowed to do it in so long. It feels like stressful.
So guys, we have a caller. Oh, okay. No, somebody switching.
No. Oh wait.
No, it must be a caller.
We do have a caller.
Just real quick. So if we're looking at what that steps look like, it requires collaborative movement building. So it's not just about Black Americans that have been here for generations. It's also about immigrant populations, working with them. It's about working with indigenous people collectively. It's working with all these populations that are being actively oppressed and collaborating specifically on individual policies as well as the greater collective movement for liberation. And when we're looking at that work, it's also unpacking white supremacy within our own communities. Like, let's be real. Part of the biggest struggle I've ever had in any community organizing work has been helping Black men unpack their sexism and their misogynoir. Like, real talk. I waste so much of my time doing that. Wasting time unpacking homophobia, all of this stuff. So until, like, real talk. Sorry.
Don't start preaching up in here.
I'm literally doing it every day. I'm doing it every day with you. Trust me.
I grew up Baptist. I can't help it.
But we need to unpack. First, we need to unpack. We need to work together. And then while all of this is happening, we need to plant those seeds in every single space that we can. And the beauty of this right now is that these white people that are in the liberal, faux progressive areas of politics have been trying to use and tokenize Black folks and people of color within these spaces. But let's put the right people in so they can start to lay those seeds. Because let's be real, they are begging for people of color. Sorry.
So caller ending in 4644, you're on.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey.
Well, what the lady just said, yes. You got Black folks that do the same thing. Have been doing that same thing. That's trying to lump everybody in the same class. And to come together is for people to come together, I would think. And when you look up other areas where people form unity, cartels, people come together under an agenda.
It's true.
People vote their interests. They're not dedicated to any political party because some members of both political parties have a can push a issue that's very dear to you.
Mm-hmm. The parties are less partisan than people want to believe.
Let me tell you, amongst blacks, and I detest this thing where people make it seem like all blacks the same. I detest when folks say that you should buy black. I'm not buying from a black business or any other business that's supporting political candidates that go against my issues. It doesn't make sense. I mean, just think about it. If you got political candidates for higher taxes, well, I'm not for higher taxes because I may use the money I put in my pocket to help buy some resource of need for an underprivileged child. Now I can't do it no more. So that's as far as what you're making the question, should black people continue to rock the vote? Well, I say they should find another way, and they will find another way as they begin to improve on the economic situation, and also that will reflect in a social situation. Not all is going to do that. Like this present president who says he's for school choice, where parents can take their child out of the present environment that they're in and put them in an environment where they can learn the things that's necessary for them to achieve their overall long-term educational goals. That other party called liberals, Democrats, are totally against that. I wonder why.
Well, with some of them, not all of them. But I see what you're saying.
Right.
Well, it's a lot of them. It's a lot of them. And also the organizations, like the Alphabet Organization, NAACP, teachers unions, for instance. Yeah. So, no, people should, as people begin to improve on their economic circumstances, the academic searching. Historical black colleges will not improve unless the young people that's coming into those colleges can carry their own. And the reason they can't carry their own has nothing to do with them biologically. It's because where they're coming from, they were not prepared. And thus, they have problems. And they realize that they have problems. And I'm sure people have experienced these things.
Oh, wait,
so anyway, I don't want to take
Who are you speaking with? I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to ask.
Right, introduce yourself.
My name's Pianki. I'm calling from the Midwest.
Okay.
From the Midwest down to the South, where it's God's country, heaven.
All right now. Okay, well, thank you so much for calling.
And I'm gonna leave. I think it's really disrespectful when you hear these conversations by some pundits, like the ones you hear all the time. You got the Umar Johnson, you got Roland Martin, and so on. We black people need to do this. Mr. Martin, I ain't with that. And please exclude me out of that we. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Have a good one. Well, all right.
Okay, so we're gonna start closing.
Oh dear.
Because we've been on for a while.
Right.
But this has been a great conversation, and I'm happy all you guys joined us this evening.
Thank y'all so much, guys. Seriously.
Really good.
Thank you so much.
Glad you enjoyed yourself.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So what we want to close with is actually you should ask this. Do you have the closing question?
I mean, we really I feel like talked about it all, as it pertains to voting specifically and how we get into this political thing.
I got it.
Go ahead.
Who do you think is going to be the Democratic nominee to run against Trump come November?
Oh Lord.
That's the question.
It doesn't matter.
It don't matter. Is the answer.
They're all trifling.
That's literally. I mean, to me, that's my point. It's never people when I online say shit about people that are trying to shame people that don't want to vote into voting. It's like you guys don't even I don't know if you guys even see how literally it don't matter. There's a point in which it's gonna take long, you know what I'm saying, of us literally not even trying to get this person into the political race. You know what I'm saying? Or this person down the road, generations down the road, into the political race, and it's still gonna really just keep going back and forth with us, where they treat us like all the shit in the world, and then treat us like a little bit of shit. You know what I'm saying? They treat us like we the fertilizer, quote unquote, that we've been the whole time. You know what I'm saying? So it's they go back and forth between giving us what we need and just giving us shit. Historically, that's the pattern. So it's just it don't really matter until we are ready to really jump in.
You can't just answer the closing question. All right.
That's what she said. She said it don't matter.
Brandon and Blair, what do you guys think?
I think they did skis because they had to go. Yeah.
Wally, what do you think?
We're still here. We didn't go. We didn't.
Okay, I didn't go. Yeah. Okay, maybe it was Wally.
Okay.
With all of these, there's just so many layers, right? I think the simplest way I always put it is let's just get rid of capitalism. Let's get rid of religion. Let's get rid of the concept of race. Give everybody health care, housing, make transportation a global thing. Let's just make the world a place for us all to live in. We can do it. Why not? And that's all I got.
Because white people made too much money off the opposite.
and I'm down for getting rid of certain Abrahamic religions for sure, and colonize people within ATRs. They can go as well. Other than that, other colonized minds in ATRs, they can go as well, because it's the way they be bringing their Christianness into the freaking. Let me stop. So yeah. Back to original religion, if anything.
But thank you guys for joining us all tonight under the Anukai tree. Make sure you follow, and subscribe us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever podcasts are available, and make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube and follow us on IG at Anukai tree. Thank you to our guests tonight. We'll be back next week. We're probably going to do another pre-recorded show, but it was nice doing the live show tonight. Make sure you follow us on IG and Twitter at Mick Sykes on IG and at Mr. Sykes on Twitter. And
at Jib Jack on IG, at Jib Jack on Twitter. Come see me, Jack Fuller, on Facebook if you're trying to just see the T.
That's GAQ. Wait.
GYPJAQ.
I had to.
Yeah.
But good night, guys, and thank you for calling.
Guys, can y'all give y'all social media just so that people can come see y'all?
Yeah, you can find us on Facebook, Blair and Brandon Dottin-Haley, and then on Instagram, BK Dottin-Haley and BI Dottin-Haley, and then the Blairisms and theblairisms.com. That's our website.
Real.
Morgan?
Yep. You can find me on Facebook at Morgann Freeman. Morgan is spelled with 2 N's. I also have my personal page. So my personal Facebook page, that's Morgann Freeman NE. Or you can also find me on Twitter at the same handle, Instagram on the same handle, or reach out through my website if you're about liberation work and about supporting people of color entering into political spaces to improve them for the better at morgannfreeman.com.
Yes, God.
Thank you. You guys can catch us here next Tuesday or Wednesday. TV time at the Anukai tree. Yeah. Good night, everybody.
Thank y'all for sitting there.
Good night.
Yo!